Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here, I'm Ramira Arlilia, the owner of Your Milk LLC, where I create handcrafted skincare and self-care products. Instead of just listening to true crime stories in the background while I'm in my makeshift studio, I've decided to share them with you all every Saturday. So sit back, hit the subscribe button, and relax as we take on a new journey while I craft a new creation. Check out the description box below for more details on what I'm creating, and feel free to explore our website while you're there. Now, let's make a batch of handmade soap as we get into today's story. As mentioned, when I work on new creations, I like to have background noise, which is usually my favorite true crime channel or another guilty pleasure, pop culture news, aka celebrity gossip. I've made many a things while Scandival unfolded and can probably name almost every housewife past and present. Well, although we have the recent Diddy and Trump of it all, very rarely do these two worlds collide. I usually just pick a channel and let it play until I'm done with whatever I'm doing, but while listening to one of my all-time favorite gossip channels and noticing that he kept saying the word cult, I definitely put down my stick blender and had to pay attention to what I was hearing. Raise your hand emoji if you have heard of the alleged 7M TikTok cult and watched the 3-part Netflix docuseries exposing it. Like this video as a placeholder if you have not, so you can go and watch part 1 because baby, there are about to be spoilers. Confession. I'm a TikTok novice. Not sure how I have over 1,000 followers that I'm thankful for, although some are obviously bots, because I have the foggiest clue what the hell I'm doing over there. I do, however, know how to scroll, and upon scrolling, I love to vicariously live through those extremely professionally edited dance videos. I have the rhythm, but lack the coordination. Apparently, if you look closely at the bios of those beloved dancers who always seem to collaborate with each other, you will see one reoccurring thing. They all have 7M in their bio, email, or as a hashtag. I ran so quickly to the Williams film TikTok to make sure Gage didn't need me to personally go and save him from Shekinah. I seem to have gotten ahead of myself, so let's start from the beginning. The series starts by introducing us to Miranda and Melanie Wilking, better known as the Wilking sisters, from Detroit, Michigan, who took social media by storm, especially right before the pandemic. Personally, I had not heard of them specifically because, again, I just like to scroll, so I'm sure I've seen a video or two. The contrast of hearing how close the sisters were in the beginning years is soon overshadowed by learning that the once duo was now operating as separate acts. Now, I have a younger sister myself, and we too are 2.5 years apart. We have done everything together, and I'm sure if we pulled out our memory box, our sentiments would echo the same. In February of 2022, Melanie and her parents decided to go live on Instagram as a cry for help to get Miranda back into their lives. It's at this time that we hear that Miranda has potentially joined a cult by the name of Shekinah. So for someone who cannot dance and who is not familiar with the chain of events prior to this, I almost turned the docuseries off. It sounded so far-fetched that there is a secret cult on TikTok of dancers, and what does Shekinah from Love and Hip Hop have to do with it? See how my celebrity gossip blended with my true crime of it all and had my brain malfunctioning? Well, apparently, when Miranda joined this church, she cut off all ties with her family. Numbers were blocked, social media accounts were blocked. No one had seen Miranda for quite some time, to the point they felt their platform was the best way to get her attention or the attention of those who could help them locate her. Obviously, the plan worked because here we are, and in the docuseries, they transitioned to a more present day where her parents locate the church and her father interacts with what appears to be an intercom. At this point in the video, I'm still not sold on the show, because I didn't understand the magnitude of what was actually going on. I was kind of Team Miranda and thought the family seemed overbearing. The live video was a bit chaotic, and the father recording this interaction with the intercom and then sending it to Miranda on social media, knowing that he was blocked, seemed a bit odd. But as someone who watches edited shows, I had to start looking at it from a different perspective. I did not see the entire Instagram live video, so I shouldn't have been so quick to judge. The sending of the message could have been for a dramatic effect because, again, I'm watching it on Netflix. So now that I took my bias blinders off, I allowed myself to view it as a case. Which brings us to the man in question and how this whole thing got started. Robert Shin, the pastor of the Shekinah Church and the founder of 7M Films, which is the speculated management company of your most favorite viral dancers. Honestly, the first words out of Robert's mouth during his sermon gave me serious Jim Jones vibes. Sold. Miranda's in the cult, everybody. That was the exact thoughts going through my head because the way he spoke to the congregation and the way they laughed at his anecdotes seemed like it would have only been humorous to the brainwashed. As another semi-relatable moment, my grandfather is a pastor and has been my whole life. Not one sermon has centered around a single family, no matter what they did. Granted, none of them warranted a documentary or caused social media craze. But if your pastor has done that, then please let me know in the comments. The piece of his sermon that we did get to hear came off as completely unhinged, while hiding it with a hint of humor. A PR stunt, if you will, to ensure everyone that Miranda's family was trying to come after them all, instead of trying to save their daughter. The Instagram video opened the floodgates because now everybody is talking about the 7M dance cult on TikTok. News columns, magazines, you name it. It went from trying to save Miranda to noticing that it was about 11 other people that appeared to be held captive, and all had mention of 7M listed somewhere on their profile. These viral dancers had millions of followers between their social media accounts. They also had the pandemic in the chokehold with their smooth dance moves, high-quality edits, and catchy tunes that had us all trying to learn the choreography. My now 18-year-old daughter lives, breathes, and sleeps dance. She literally took her first steps to music. My sister and I were in the living room trying to get her to walk to either of us from across the room, and we started singing Shake Your Money Maker by Ludacris. I know, but it was because of how catchy the tune was. I kid you not, she legit started bouncing and stepping across the floor. So I do understand on a small scale what it looks like when you want your child to pursue their dream. But I would never want it to be at the cost of losing herself while doing it. So Robert Shin knew exactly what he was doing when he started managing these dancers and putting on this facade for millions to see. The fancy clothes, the nice cars, the beautiful mansions, and dozens of endorsements would look like the dream to any starving artist or content creator. So as this was all coming to light, of course the comment section was lit, and many were making their own TikToks with the same questions and speculations that I had. Maybe it's Miranda's family that's the problem. What proof do you have that she's in a cult? She's just a young girl living her dream in LA. This forced Miranda to make a clarifying video of her own, where she posts kind of an open letter to her fans about why she was becoming distant from her family. And honestly, to me, it wasn't a good look. It sounded very culty, with mentions of her finding her religion and her family just didn't understand. By now, since the documentary has premiered, you can easily search all the resurfaced videos and see exactly what I mean to make your own assessment. But for me, it even sounded very different than the Miranda the series opened up with. The series then goes back into the history of the Wilking sisters and how things came to be. They seemed like a pretty close-knit family who loved to dance. After high school, Miranda came to that famous fork in the road that I love to talk about, where she had to make the decision to pursue either a theater program or move to LA and pursue dance there. LA won, and this is where Miranda got a taste of the limelight and auditioned for the popular TV competition show, So You Think You Can Dance. Rest in peace to Twitch. My mother and I watched his entire dance journey together, and she too is now gone. Her mother recalls that Miranda did sometimes appear sad, although she was living her dream, and one day she asked her if she just wanted to come home. Miranda replied with, "I want to come home, but I want this more." That honestly sounds like a typical response for someone who has a goal and wants to attain it, so the hairs on the back of my neck didn't raise with that one. But since it was clear that Miranda was not moving back home, Melanie, having never been away from her sister, decided that if Miranda was staying, then she was coming with her. So she too moved to LA with her big sister. They were back to doing everything together, from auditions to tours, and this led them to develop the Wilking Sisters brand. Their popularity and the endorsements and collaborations led to their meeting with another dance sensation, a crumper by the name of B-Dash. I'm far too busty and uncoordinated to have ever learned that dance, but I could watch Chris Brown do it all day. Through this collaboration, it appeared that Miranda and B-Dash had some kind of romantic love connection. So with that little piece of information, I was thinking, again, maybe the family is just being overprotective. Not because B-Dash was black, but they didn't really mention Miranda's dating life prior to him. So this could have been like her first boyfriend, her first true love. And we all know when that happens, you want to be up under them. So she could have become distant for that reason. But that couldn't be further from the truth, because we then learned that Melanie was invited to one of these dinners that Miranda was disappearing off to. So the dinner takes place at Robert Shin's house, and this was Melanie's chance to get a glimpse of what had been taking all of Miranda's time. There's several other victims, is what I'm calling them, of this cult that describe the same type of scenario or scenery that Melanie had experienced. But for the sake of time, I am going to provide my commentary on what she experienced. She said that Robert had asked her if she would consider herself a sinner, in which she responded that she didn't think so. But he didn't stop there. He proceeded to ask her, "What if I told you you have already sinned maybe 1,000 times today?" And then told her that if she were to die right now, she would go to hell. I would have told him, "Well, you can join me," as I politely gave him the church finger and excused myself from the dinner table. All of this is being said as they are sitting at the table with an open Bible. Now, as I've said, my grandfather is a pastor, my dad was a preacher, and my grandmother served as a chaplain assistant in the military for almost 30 years. Between all of those, I never once read a Bible at dinner, and we spent many of Thanksgivings and Christmases at my grandfather's house. No offense to anyone else who may do that, but for a first encounter, that would have raised a red flag to me. I'm just being honest. Melanie still sat at that dinner table, and my guess is because her sister was there with her. But after Robert told her this, ironically, my father's name is Robert. I don't know why I just had that thought, but he too has passed. He's not this Robert, but geez Louise, there is a lot of intertwining things with my life and theirs besides the millions of dollars and followers and all that stuff. Okay, back to Melanie. Okay, so she says that after that, they then sit in a circle with Robert in the middle, and he lays his hands on her, starts speaking in tongues, and said, "You are now saved." I would not have been able to tell you that story because my ass would have got up when he told me that I was going to hell. Again, what in the Jim Jones is going on at the Shekinah Church? Now, this is the part of the series where the crime picked up for me, because Robert was not only controlling the personal lives of his congregation, he was taking over their dance videos as well and calling himself a producer. That means he was getting paid 10% in tithes, 10% of man of God fees, 10% offering, and 20% management fees because he was calling himself the producer. That's already 50% of whatever money these dancers were making for those videos, and on top of that, he was charging them rent to stay in those mansions. Miranda's family could actually see transactions for thousands of dollars being drained from her bank account, but she, in her opinion, was doing the work of God, and that was the price that she was paying for her blessings. According to Robert, though. Sadly, their grandfather passed away in 2021, and Miranda's excuse for not leaving LA to go to the ceremony in Detroit was because she had COVID. Again, this is a pretty tight-knit group, and I know tensions were still pretty high in 2021, but her mother was not buying that, and neither was Melanie, because it did not sound like something Miranda would say at her own will. Her parents kept trying to question why she wasn't actually coming home, and it led Miranda to confess that, quote unquote, I need to ask someone closer to God than you. Cult behavior. Robert had finally gotten Miranda to prove her faith by leaving her family. The other victims of this story said that he called this phase of his teaching, die to yourself. And that means that whatever you want or whatever you need, die to it, because then it can be resurrected. He masked this as loving with God and not with mankind. So in his sermons, he was actually saying that you're not Jesus's disciple until you've died to your loved ones. What in the Jim Jones? He taught that you had to die to your family in order to save them, which makes sense that Miranda told her family she needed permission from someone closer to God than them in order to see them. They couldn't even wish Miranda any happy birthdays, and if they tried, instantly blocked. This is when Miranda's family couldn't take it anymore, and they did make that viral video because she had severed all ties with her family. Basically, they didn't even know where she was. They only found out that she had married B- through social media because they posted a video of the proposal, and they noticed that she went from waist-length brown hair to a bob that was blonde. After that video surfaced, Robert Shin spiraled out of control by making everyone sign NDAs. And if you can find that scripture in the Bible, please post it in the comments below. His sermons went from how to save souls to how to save his own ass. The police couldn't help any of the parents really because these were adult children, so they had to be the ones to ask. But if an NDA does not uphold when a law is broken, how is it that the law wouldn't investigate labor laws or sex trafficking without being prompted by the victim? I know that states take over cases all of the time, and something is telling me the taxes could definitely be fishy in this case because of how Robert is obtaining the money. But Robert Shin did some more mumbo jumbo on the congregation and convinced them that the only reason why Miranda's family was doing this is because Miranda was a white girl from suburbia and B- was a black man from Compton, and they did not want them to be together. They play another clip from Robert Shin's sermon, and hearing his voice about how 7M is going to silence those around them and end up famous was chilling and a parallel to Jim Jones. I hope nobody drinks the Kool-Aid, don't eat the spaghetti, stay clear of anything that he tries to serve you. So that is my take on episode 1. I really wanted to do 1, 2, and 3 in the same video, but I am really trying to keep these videos under 20 minutes as best I can because you can only make soap for so long. I have now passed that time, so let's keep the discussion alive in the comments. Do you believe this is a cult or young adults living their dreams and their families are just misunderstanding? I'm curious to know your thoughts because, as you see, I have a plethora. I'm also seeing that some people are speculating that possibly Twitch was a part of this cult. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Tune in next week as I recap episode 2 of the Netflix docuseries titled The Escape. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. Until next time, self-care, don't drink the Kool-Aid, and stay safe. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here, I'm Romera Arlilia, the owner of Your Milk LLC, where I create handcrafted skincare and self-care products. Instead of just listening to true crime stories in the background while I'm in my makeshift studio, I've decided to share them all with you every Saturday. So sit back, hit that subscribe button, and relax as we take on a new journey while I craft a new creation. Check out the description box below for more details on what I'm creating, and feel free to explore our website while you're there. Now, let's make a batch of handmade soap as we journey into today's story. Last week, we did a recap together over part 1 of the Netflix docuseries Dancing for the Devil, the 7M TikTok cult, which focused heavily on sisters Miranda and Melanie Wilking. If you haven't had a chance to check out that video or part 2 of the Netflix series, give this video a like as a placeholder so you can catch up because, baby, there are about to be spoilers. I left this episode with way more questions than I did answers. A few weeks ago, we covered the O.J. Simpson trial, and I had a very helpful subscriber break down for me how O.J. Simpson was found not guilty in the murder trial, but liable in the civil suit. So if you're watching, I'm in desperate need for your expertise regarding the law on this one. If even an iota of what Robert Shin is accused of doing to the Lee sisters is true, I need the same energy y'all had for Weinstein, R. Kelly, and Bill Cosby. But again, I seem to have gotten ahead of myself, so let me focus back on this episode. Part 2 of the series, titled The Escape, centers around two sisters named Priscilla and Melanie Lee, who were also victim of Robert Shin's Shekinah Church nearly 25 years prior to what's currently in the media. Melanie caught wind of the current events because of the live video that the Wilkins family posted in 2022, which seems to be where shit hit the fan with this guy. Melanie realized that what they were describing seemed like similar things she went through before she left the Shekinah Church over a decade ago. I've mentioned a number of times throughout my videos that I am very intrigued in the human psyche and find it fascinating how the mind works. In last week's video, I also touched briefly about my own experience with religion. I'm not overly religious, but I do believe in just not being a shitty person. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, which is probably the bare minimum of being a Christian, but maybe at least my place in hell may have an air conditioner. That being said, I don't see how Robert Shin missed that verse in the Bible, and this heathen had it memorized, because he did not do unto others as he would have them do unto him. Or maybe he actually did in his mind. Melanie Lee met Robert Shin in the early 2000s when she was a teenager. Her home life was not described as stable as the Wilking sisters, but she had her big sister Priscilla as her protector. Personally, I've lost both of my parents, and all I have outside of my children is a handful of people that I could count on, and one of those is being my younger sister. This is what led her to even start going to the Shekinah Church in the first place. She had a sense of community and belonging that she was not getting from her personal life, aside from what she shared with her sister. So with that, I started wondering what are some things that we could easily be susceptible to when we are in a vulnerable state that could seem cult-like. I'm not saying it's a cult. Please don't assume that I'm saying it's a cult. My father was in the Marines. My grandmother was a chaplain assistant in the Army. My other grandma was in the Air Force. I've even dated someone in the Navy. So I'm not saying this is a cult. But could the military be seen as one? I mean, their characteristics are similar. What Melanie described seemed more like a support system, and that's what she was desperately seeking. But I guess, like with any case of classic manipulation, it's a gradual process and doesn't just come out of left field. Melanie became really close with Robert's sister and was starting to become part of the family. He even touched on this in one of his sermons by saying most of the people who came to his church were not close with their own families, and he had a deeper connection now with them than they ever did. Which at face value may be true, but as someone who is feeling alone in the world, he came off as their savior. There were 3 instances that stood out to me the most in part 2. One of them being how Melanie Lee escaped the Shekinah Church 11 years prior to the docuseries. She said that one day, right before Robert Shin was about to make an announcement, half a dozen girls burst into the congregation and accused him of sexually assaulting them. According to Melanie, there was pretty much a chain of command which consisted of members being the lowest, then mentors, woman of God, and finally man of God, which was Robert. Remember in the last video, I mentioned that Robert was charging the 7M dancers man of God fees? Yeah, this is how he was stealing their money. Anyway, I noticed that Melanie called them girls, and then when she told the rest of the story, she referred to them as women. It made me wonder if she did so subconsciously or if they just so happened to be young women. Did anyone else catch that? Still sounds very R. Kelly to me, but I digress. Anywho, the women that accused Robert of sexual assault were all vying for the title Woman of God, without knowing that Robert had already taken a wife. His sister led the charge and denounced his status in front of the entire church by saying he should be ashamed of himself and that he was not, in fact, a man of God. Robert charmed the crowd as most narcissists do by making it seem like these women seduced him and that since he was still of the flesh, he unfortunately fell weak to it, which in my opinion is the ultimate pedo plea. Melanie said they lost a lot of members that day, but Robert was so convincing that some chose to stay, including herself and her sister. Robert Shin's sister, however, hightailed it out of there and took most of the workers with her. With majority of his mistresses now gone, Robert Shin started turning his attention to Melanie and began making sexual advances towards her. Ew. He had even offered Melanie to another member of the congregation. So for her, that was the last straw, and she too played an escape route and left the Shekinah church. She wanted to take her sister Priscilla with her, but Priscilla refused to leave. This led Priscilla being victim to Robert Shin and the Shekinah church for an additional 10 years after Melanie left. Robert manipulated the hell out of Priscilla by convincing her that her sister was now cursed because she left the Shekinah church and wronged him. Priscilla has said more than once that Melanie was her weak spot. That was her baby sister. That's who she was basically raising when their parents abandoned them in a sense. So she did everything in her power to try to save her sister, even though Robert was not guiding her in the way that was holy. Priscilla's last straw was when Hannah, who is Robert Shin's wife, I think like his third or fourth wife at this point, came into the room and destroyed all of her belongings and beat her. And when Robert Shin entered the room, he said, "Hannah has done nothing wrong to you." And at that point, Priscilla said she would rather be in hell than spend her life like that. You can definitely see the two totally different paths that these sisters are currently in their life. They grew up so close together, and I think at this point of the series, Melanie had been out of the Shekinah church for 11 years, and Priscilla had only been out maybe a year, if that. I know she left in 2022, and the docuseries was filmed in 2022, so not sure how long. And I don't recall them saying exactly how she escaped. You guys will remind me in the comments. So from Melanie's perspective, she said that basically she just suppressed it. She tries not to think about it, but it was brought back up, of course, when the Wilking situation happened. You can still see the pain and the fear in her eyes when she talks about Robert. And with Priscilla, it is even more devastating. She still listens to recordings of Robert's sermons, and I hope that she does not end up in a similar situation or go back to the exact same situation, but she definitely has some healing to do. Part of me wonders if Melanie feels guilty for what Priscilla went through, for the simple fact, one, she's the one who introduced them to the church, and for two, the reason why Priscilla said that she put up with what she did was she was trying to save her sister. And then that makes me wonder if Priscilla then in return resents her for it. because she stayed in the Shekinah church for over 20 years. I'm definitely not leaving out the current victims of 7M who recently left the church. But again, this docuseries is so long and I'm trying to have a focal point. So maybe I'll talk about them more next week. But another part of the story that stood out to me was the fact that the Wilking family reached out to the Lee sisters for guidance on what they can do involving Miranda. Because after that live video, a lot of those members started putting 2 and 2 together and was no longer getting 4. So they left the church, but people like Miranda and B-Dash, they're still there. And they want to figure out how can they get them to see what everyone else is currently seeing. Miranda's family has said that they pretty much had to promise her that they would no longer speak about the Shekinah church while they're together, because Miranda said if she has to hear about this every single time, she's just not going to come around. In part 1, we know that they have been longing to see their daughter. So for them, that is going through that same nightmare again. So they vowed not to talk about it. They share this information with Melanie Lee, and she pretty much said, no, talk about it, press her about it, keep talking about it, bringing it up, because as long as you're quiet about it, she's not going to realize that she's pretty much in danger, and Robert is going to get exactly what he wants. I didn't even think about it that way when her parents were talking about it, because again, I have a teenage daughter. She's 18 years old. So if she decided she wanted to get up and go join a cult, according to the police, there's nothing that I can do about it. So I too think I would feel the same way. I would rather have her in my presence than not at all. But at the same time, how do you save your child? Because at the end of the day, that is your baby. That doesn't mean you have to treat them like a baby. But I mean, now that I do have an adult child, that is my daughter, and if she needs me, I'm going to be there. Not as a crutch, but as a support system. How can you support someone that's not talking to you? And now that I have saddened myself with hypotheticals, let's keep the discussion alive in the comments. Please share your thoughts, because as you see, I have way more questions than answers. I don't understand how the law is not stepping in, at least in this part of the docuseries, because it's proven that this man has done check fraud. I'm pretty sure there's some underage stuff going on. Even if not underage, there's still some sexual assault going on, because it don't sound like nobody but these women of gods that he keeps getting is consenting to half of this stuff. What are your thoughts on Miranda? Do you think it'll take her 23 years to leave the church as it did Priscilla, because she too is thinking that she's saving her family? I'm curious to know your thoughts. Tune in next week as I recap episode 3 titled Reap What You Sow. So if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. Until next time, self-care and stay safe. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here, I'm Romera Arlilia, your host and the owner of Your Milk LLC, where I create handcrafted skincare and self-care products. Instead of just listening to true crime in the background while I work in my makeshift studio, I decided to share them all with you every Saturday. So sit back, hit that subscribe button, and relax as we take on a new journey while I craft a new creation. Check out the description box below for more details on the product that I'm creating, and feel free to explore our website while you're there. Now, let's get into today's story. For the past several weeks, I have been recapping the docuseries on Netflix about the 7M TikTok dance cult. If the algorithm has brought you this far, then I trust that you do know a little something about the 7M TikTok cult. But if not, I highly suggest you like this video as a placeholder and go catch up on my 2 previous recaps. That way we can all enjoy the conclusion together. And ironically, I use the term enjoy and conclusion loosely because I was dissatisfied. Not with the series as a whole, because I do believe they did a very good job at bringing this to light. Because again, as someone who is a novice on TikTok but does enjoy scrolling, I had no clue that there was some little hidden Shekinah church, Robert Shin pastor, TikTok dance cult, multi-million-dollar thing going on in the background. I like my true crime stories to have an ending. Crime, period, is horrible. My heart goes out to victims and families and loved ones. But I want to know that the criminal is in jail or in hell. I want to know that there was an end to their reign of terror. And for the 3rd time, I have gotten ahead of myself. So let me refocus and actually cover part 3, titled Reap What You Sow. So I know that this all started because the Wilking family went on social media as a plea to their loved one, Miranda Derrick now, was Wilking at the time, but went on to social media basically pleading for her to get in contact with them. She hadn't spoken to them in so long, and they suspected that she was in a cult. They saw that her bank account was being drained. She's not really communicating with them. She's blocking them on social media, phones, whatever. They couldn't find her. But I will say, and no, this is no competition, but the Lee sisters definitely took over this documentary. These are some badass chicks. Like the espionage that we witnessed in the opening scene with them tracking down Robert and his puppets at a Korean restaurant and serving him with some papers. Like that, especially if you recall what they went through, because they basically gave their background and their story in the second part. But like, if you recall what they went through, that shit took some guts. Like, I was like rooting for them as this opened. But in the same breath, my heart sank because Priscilla felt guilty for doing that, which is understandable because, again, if you recall, she just recently left the Shekinah church and she has been out here on her own after being a part of that cult for over 20 years. That's 20 years of being told what to do, what to say, what to eat, where to work. And not only that, she alleges that, and I'm only saying allege because, again, we have not came to a conclusion. So she alleges that Robert sexually abused her for 10 years. I'm not diagnosing her because I can't, but this definitely, to me, displayed, in my opinion, Stockholm Syndrome. It's like she knows that what she went through was terrible. She understands that what Robert Shin did to her was wrong. But for the past 20 plus years, these are people that she considered family. These are people that she protected. And she says this. So I really felt for Priscilla throughout basically this entire episode. But she kind of confirmed what I felt last time with, okay, she's just now recently out of this cult, so I wonder where her headspace is and how she's feeling, and hoping that she can find the strength to really move forward with the rest of her life. And then you have Melanie Lee, who has now been removed from that cult lifestyle for over a decade. She now has her own family. She has a daughter. You know, she has been acclimated to the way of the world in a sense that Priscilla has not. So it's almost like they are living in 2 totally different eras. Like, Priscilla feels like she's lost 20 years of her life, and Melanie has felt that she has moved on for the past 10. But to me, my opinion, Melanie may still have some things that she needs to work through, because I believe it was in part 1 or part 2. She basically just said she suppressed it. So she hasn't really dealt with the depths, from what we know in this series, of what she went through and how she ended up there. And you can really see that with Priscilla's interaction with her father. I would not have known that both of their parents were still alive. Granted, when they went through what they went through, the Lee sisters, there wasn't social media like that. Like, no, their parents couldn't hop on Instagram Live and like beg for basically like a media outrage or bring the situation to light. But it's like, did y'all look for them? Because these were young girls when this happened. Because I believe Melanie said she was in 9th grade when she was baptized by Robert, but she was already there for 4 years. So this was 4 years after she met him. So like, these were young girls. I know that they had a questionable upbringing, but at what point were you looking for your children? So then we have the sit down with Melanie and Priscilla. And like I said, some of the things that I suspected just by watching the series, again, we're getting a glimpse of pretty much an edited show. Just from the little bit that I saw, I still, in my heart, feel that Priscilla slightly or maybe greatly resents Melanie for what has happened. I know that we're all responsible for ourselves, but I mean, if you have a close relationship with your sibling or a best friend or anything, any kind of close relationship, like, I can see it being easy to possibly manipulate someone if you think that you're doing something to save them. So like, Priscilla stayed in that atmosphere as long as she did because Robert was manipulating her to believe that she was saving her sister. And now that Priscilla knows that that was a lie, I wonder how she feels about that. Because she really goes into like wishing that she didn't miss out on so much of her life, like she was in her 20s 20 years ago. So she feels she's missed on the opportunity to have children, to have a family, to know what life is like, living it to your standards and living within your dreams and your truth instead of someone else's. So that is something I wholeheartedly hope that they work through, because I think Melanie got a sense of where Priscilla is now, but it does seem like it's hard for her to understand her at this point in their relationship, because she has had that freedom the past 10 years. She has had that privilege to become a mother, to, be in a relationship, to have a family, to work where you want to work, to eat what you want to eat. She's been able to do that. It seems like she can't relate to Priscilla, and Priscilla cannot relate to her. She doesn't understand the ways of the world the way that Melanie has seen it, because she missed it, in her opinion. So Priscilla is pursuing a civil suit against Robert, as well as the other 4 victims that has been providing commentary throughout this docuseries. So that's one resolve that we got. But the police is pretty much saying that there's not much that they can do, because everyone here is a consenting adult at this point. Even though we on the outside feel it's wrong, by law, they don't see Robert doing anything wrong, and there's not enough evidence. There's a lot of he say, she say. But there's a shit ton of smoke for there to not be fire. So I'm shocked with the money questions. That alone, he's defrauding something, allegedly. And the main person that this docuseries started behind, Miranda, she's still in the cult. And so are several other people whose families appeared in this docuseries. So, like, Robert's not in jail. Miranda's still not with her family. Like, she's talking to him more, but they feel like it's for social media, not in the way it used to be. So, that being said, let's keep the discussion alive in the comments. I'm curious to know your thoughts. I still want to slightly dig into whether or not Twitch may have been a part of this, but I think I am 7M'd out at this point until we start talking about it, I guess, in 2025, because right now I'm just like, Nobody's doing anything. It's just a whole lot of talking. If I could help, I would. I don't know where my expertise would be needed. They need some soap or something. I got them. Some bath salts, milk baths. I got that kind of stuff. But anyway, I'm curious to know your thoughts. So feel free to leave them down in the comments. Thank you for joining me on today's video. If you enjoyed the comment, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. Until next time, self-care and stay safe.